You're afraid of being alone. Not because you don't enjoy your own company, but because you were taught that solitude means failure. If you're alone, something must be wrong. If no one calls, you must be unworthy. If you don't belong somewhere, you must not matter. But that's a lie.
A deeply embedded lie fed to keep you chasing connection, even if it costs your peace. Because when you're always surrounded, you're easier to influence, easier to sell to, easier to distract. Solitude was never the problem. It was the threat. Because when you're truly alone, you start to hear the one voice the world can't control. Your own. Loneliness is the ache of being unseen. Solitude is the power of seeing yourself. The world doesn't teach you to sit in stillness. It teaches you to fill it. With noise, with people, with motion. Because silence is threatening. It reveals the cracks, the truths you've been burying under distractions, the questions you've been too busy to ask. Like, do I even know who I am without the noise? Most people don't. That's why they chase constant contact. They don't want connection. They want a distraction from themselves. But solitude strips that away. It removes the masks, the roles, the performance. And what's left is you. Unfiltered, uncomfortable, but finally, real. You've spent your life surrounded, rooms full of people, timelines full of noise, but deep down, you still felt alone. That's not solitude. That's disconnection. Being near people doesn't mean being with them. And the loneliest place in the world is being unseen in a crowd. Solitude is different. Solitude is chosen. It's the deliberate act of removing yourself, not to escape others, but to finally meet yourself. No filters, no validation loops, no audience, just you and the thoughts you've been avoiding. And it's in that space where you begin to rebuild, not from noise, but from truth, not from attention, but from presence. You're not losing connection. You're learning to connect without needing to be needed. Solitude doesn't shrink you. It refines you. When no one's watching, you stop performing. When no one's validating, you stop adapting. And slowly, the roles fade, the noise dies down, and the person underneath it all starts to breathe again. That's why solitude is feared. Because it doesn't let you hide. It holds up a mirror and asks you to finally see what's real. Not what they praised, not what they followed, not what they liked, but what's true, what's raw, what's still there when the phone dies, the room empties, and the world forgets your name. Solitude gives you back the most important thing you ever lost, your own presence. You've been taught to fear being alone. That solitude is what happens when you're unloved, unchosen, forgotten. But the truth? Solitude is what happens when you stop settling, when you'd rather be at peace with yourself than in pieces with someone else. When you stop filling your time with half-hearted connections just to silence your fear of being with you. Because there's a difference between isolation and intention. Isolation is running from the world. Solitude is returning to yourself. And in that return, you start hearing things that got lost in the noise. Your intuition, your real desires, your actual thoughts, not the ones you borrowed from others. You start building, not just existing, living, not performing. And for the first time, you're alone, but never lonely. In solitude, there's no applause, no validation, no one to tell you who you are. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Because once the noise is gone, your real voice has space to rise. Not the voice trained to please. not the one shaped by likes and algorithms. The voice that existed before you were edited, before the world told you how to act, think, love, live. At first it's faint, then it gets louder, and eventually it leads. You begin to live from within, not from reaction. Your worth no longer swings with opinion. Your peace is no longer borrowed, because you've learned the secret. You are not meant to be filled by the outside. You are meant to be rooted from the inside. And solitude? That's where the roots grow. Solitude isn't the absence of love. It's the space where self-trust is born. When no one's around to guide you, you become your own compass. When there's no echo, you start to trust your own voice. You stop asking for permission to exist, to rest, to grow, to feel. You don't need constant conversation to feel connected, because you're finally connected to yourself. And from that place, relationships shift. You stop clinging to people who half love you. You stop fearing silence in rooms where you once over-explained. You stop confusing presence with peace, because you've been alone, and you've survived it. Not just survived, expanded. Now you don't fear losing people, because you found the one person you needed most. Solitude doesn't isolate you. It prepares you for relationships that are real, for conversations that go deeper, for a life that's built on alignment, not approval. Because when you know how to be alone, you stop settling for presence that drains you. You stop fearing space between you and others, because now you understand. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. Solitude teaches you to be selective, not guarded, not bitter, just clear. You don't need more people. You need the right ones. People who can sit with your silence, not just your performance. And you'll know them, because you'll meet them after you've stopped fearing being alone. Not as a need, but as a choice. Most people use others to escape themselves. But you stayed. In the quiet, in the ache, in the nights that felt endless and unspoken. You didn't numb it, didn't run from it, didn't disguise it as productivity or fake positivity. You sat with it, and that changed everything. Because solitude doesn't just heal, it sharpens. It shows you what's real and what was noise, what was you and what was just habit. And now, you move slower, speak less, feel deeper. Not because you're hiding, but because you no longer need to prove. You're rooted now, not in performance, in presence. And from that place, you're untouchable. You used to fill the silence because it scared you. Now you guard it, because it centers you. You don't fear being misunderstood. You fear betraying your own clarity just to be accepted. That's what solitude gave you. Inner alignment. The kind that doesn't shift when people leave. The kind that doesn't shatter when you're unseen. Because now you know. Loneliness is needing someone to make you feel whole. Solitude is knowing you already are. You're no longer waiting for someone to choose you. You've already chosen yourself. And from that place, you love differently. You lead differently. You live differently. Quiet, focused, unmoved. Because the one thing they can't take from you anymore is your center. You don't need to explain your peace. You don't owe anyone your noise. Now, you move through the world like a question they can't answer. Not because you're mysterious, but because you're whole. Solitude taught you that validation is optional, that presence is powerful, that the loudest room in the world can't compete with the calm of a grounded mind. You've stopped filling silence with distraction. Now, you listen to it. Because inside that quiet, you hear your intuition. You hear your wisdom. You hear you. And the more you listen, the less you tolerate what drains. You don't react. You don't explain. You exit. Quietly. Completely. Because when you've mastered solitude, chaos loses its grip. You become untouchable. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. So here you are. Not lonely. Not hiding. Not waiting. Just present. You no longer chase connection out of fear. You no longer fear silence. Because solitude isn't where you lost the world. It's where you found yourself. You sit alone now, not because no one called, but because you finally stopped calling people who made your presence feel like a burden. And in this stillness, you discovered your voice, your pace, your truth. You've learned that the real freedom isn't found in attention. It's found in autonomy. The ability to choose who gets access, what gets your time, and how you hold your energy. This isn't loneliness. This is arrival. This is ownership. This is you. Undiluted, unafraid, and fully home.